Today is the saddest day on the calendar in Israel, which is Yom Hazikaron, which is the day when we remember all the fallen soldiers of Israel, all the victims of terrorism, and all the security forces who fought so that Israel could exist throughout the history of the modern state of Israel. And also, in just a few hours, it will be Yom Ha'atzmaut, which is Israel's Independence Day, the happiest day on the Hebrew calendar. It's the most important day, in my opinion. We are remembering 25,420 soldiers who fell in wars, and I want to talk to you a little about my personal situation in these last few weeks. Maybe some of you have noticed that I was a bit absent from YouTube throughout this past month. I've been reflecting a lot on the subject. It's been a long time since I uploaded videos. You can see the last batch there, but I don't know if you knew, but during all this time we've been at war. We've been at war for around 600 days, and I spent 250 days in the army. That is almost a year taking part in the defense of Israel. And then when I spent these last few months after leaving the army, after all these experiences, I've been reflecting on many of the things I went through, on much of what it means for Israel to be in this land. On a personal level, it was not a very pleasant experience, as you can imagine. That's what the army is like. The first thing I want you to know and understand is that the war is not over yet. Even if it seems like it, and with your permission, I'm going to speak directly to Jewish friends who may be watching this. Especially those who live in Israel, the war is not over. There are still hostages in Gaza. There are still people in the tunnels. They are still there trapped in the hands of Hamas. I remember that at the beginning of the war, everyone who supports Israel wanted to help in some way. They were very motivated. Some even collected donations on YouTube. I remember seeing YouTubers who asked for money to help the soldiers, to help those in need. There are others who even, I don't want to say they dressed up, but they wore the army shirt symbolically to show their support for the army. And I don't know, they showed videos supporting them and all that. And that was at the beginning, when that dynamic was very strong and everything was still very fresh. From October 7th through that first month and a half, 2 months, even 4 months, there was still a lot of enthusiasm to help Israel. Now that 600 days have passed, I have to say that people, I don't know if they've forgotten that there's still a war going on. I haven't forgotten. Not only because I spent a lot of time in the war, but also because I'm not going to stop talking about this topic until the objectives are achieved. That we put an end to Hamas and that the hostages return home. And not just because of that, but because we're talking about thousands of people who lost their lives. Soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces, even though there have been 800 in this war, and all those who lost their lives before, so that we can have Israel. We have no right to remain silent. We have no right whatsoever, even as I speak to you now. There are people carrying out operations, whether in the Mossad, in the Lion's Den, doing incredible things, whether in Syria, whether in Lebanon, or at the borders, or in Gaza, trying to find the hostages. And despite this, we who are here very comfortably, there are people working very hard so that we can have this country and continue bringing light to the world and develop everything that Israel can and to the world and give to the world. But that's why I think we have no right to just rest on our laurels and do nothing. We have an obligation to all those who have fallen for the defense of Israel. And I'm saying this directly to my Jewish brothers, especially those who have YouTube channels. Gentlemen, I know it can be very exhausting to talk about the war, this and that. The war is not over. We don't have the right to stay silent. And just act as if we can just take walks around Galilee and let's take a stroll through Jerusalem and show things and do some coaching and a course about this. This isn't over yet. This is perhaps the most critical moment in the history of Israel, apart from Israel's independence in 1948. This is a crucial moment in our history that will determine Israel's existence. I don't understand how, if there are people who have the ability to influence this open struggle on social media, how can we stay silent? We can't. And I know that many people who had this fervor burned out very quickly, and I don't want to pressure them. I understand that everyone, as you saw, I paused this page for an entire month. I didn't upload a single video. I didn't show up. We all need time to breathe, and that's important. I discussed this with Gaston on his and Oksana's podcast, where we ended with this topic. Gaston told me something, and he was right. There's nothing wrong with it. Taking a break is important. But I think we already had a 600-day break, and we can't let our guard down. Now I want to turn to you who are watching this broadcast. You are also part of this defense of Israel. We can't just rely on the army to save Israel. The YouTubers in Israel are going to save Israel. This small group of 5 YouTubers who show us the face of Israel. And the pro-Israel political analysts. You are part of it too, if you consider that this is a critical moment in the history of humanity. And I think it is, in my opinion. This war that Israel is fighting is what will reflect how society will look in the future. This is a clash between the most oppressive, most totalitarian societies and the highest values of human freedom. Israel is showing this from the front lines. We are fighting this war on the front lines. That's why I thank you for taking part in sharing our videos, in distributing the material, and for educating yourselves and learning. And for also helping to restore and clean up Israel's image. Because you too are those soldiers, quote unquote. Not in the military sense, but you are definitely defending Israel, so thank you very much. You may also know that I am part of the Israel High community. Israel High is a community with representatives like Michael Rubinstein, Schwartz, myself, and others from Israel. And there are many people from my audience and from many others. We're talking about hundreds of people from many places who are part of our Israel High community. We recently finished the course called Defending Israel Without Weapons. It's a course that I taught, which is about knowing the methodology to be able to do public diplomacy on the topic of Israel, knowing how to respond to anti-Israel arguments, to the narratives, all of that. And it's a course we studied in the Israel High community. This kind of knowledge is important because these are exactly the tools we need to develop right now, since we're in a war, not only on the military front, but also on social media. That's why I invite you to take part in the Israel High community. I'm going to leave a link in the description of this video, so you can also join the Israel High community. I'm also going to pin it in the comments of this video, so you can click the link, sign up, and become members of the community. Those who are members of the community can have direct contact with me. You can communicate with me and talk if you have questions or if you have any doubts about anything. I want to go back to the topic about how I went silent. You could say this page. There is something very important about the topic of silence, and that is that silence has a value in Judaism that is brought up in many sources. Pirkei Avot, for example, says nothing benefits the body more than silence. On Yom Hazikaron, which is the day we're observing, which is the saddest day in Israel, when we remember all our fallen, all those affected, at one point during the night, and again this morning, a siren sounded throughout all of Israel. And during that siren, we stand in silence in Israel for as long as the siren lasts, and that's when we remember all these victims. That is, it's a silence that you take personally, but in reality, it's not a personal silence, it's a collective silence. That's something I really identified with, Hazikaron. That's why I recalled how important my social media page is, as it lets us create a shared space focused on Jewish philosophy. Beyond focusing on explaining topics or sending you a video and all that, I'm not going to talk to you about self-help like on many pages where they try to sell Judaism and coaching. I'm going to try to explain to you what tools we can have, what vision we should have for a better world. That's what this page is for, and I actually identified with the idea of the silence during the siren we heard this morning. I felt even worse because it's written in the Torah, in Leviticus chapter 10 verse 3, which is narrated there in Leviticus 10, when Aharon the priest, the brother of Moshe, he loses his sons. They are consumed by a fire. And there, when they tell Aharon the news that his sons passed away, it says, Vaidom Aharon, that Aharon remained silent. Leviticus 10 verse 3. And it's the same value we see on Yom Hazikaron. Because one might think on Yom Hazikaron, well, we can cry, we can complain to Hashem, but silence is also a space that allows us to fill ourselves again and reflect and understand and listen and take a step back and see what it is that Hashem wants from us. Think about it. What does Hashem want from us that is so serious? Why do we have to be a people who have been persecuted for so many millennia? Why? So one can start to complain to Hashem. Where was God on October 7th? Where was God during the Holocaust? All these classic questions. But I believe there is an answer. You just have to be quiet and listen to what Hashem wants from us. So that's why it's very important to understand that. And this is what we learn from Aharon, the priest, the brother of Moshe. That the spirituality of Aharon was not measured simply by the fact that he was a saint or by his spiritual elevation, nor because he had a mystical connection or because he did Kabbalistic or self-help meditations like some people try to sell it, which I told you is not the case. What Aharon did was be a very down-to-earth person. In fact, Aharon brought the people of Israel together. He made sure that the people of Israel always had peace among themselves. That is to say, he created more harmony than division. So I think that's one of the great lessons we should learn from Israel. The message for my Jewish brothers is to be united, despite the differences and all the discussions we may have about political or religious issues, whatever it may be, we have to be united. And also for non-Jews who support Israel, it's true that there are many discussions we could have. For example, on this page during the first year, it was full of controversies about Christianity and Judaism, little by little. One sees that these theological topics are fine to be discussed, they have to be discussed, otherwise how are we going to understand the reason for monotheism and how the Tanakh should be understood? But the truth is that we can debate these kinds of topics without being antagonistic. A Christian, a Jew, and a Muslim can sit down and put these things on the table without causing antagonism. And that's the value of what I want to say about Aaron. Aaron who loved people. Aaron's students are like that. We should create more unity. It's something I want to make very clear to everyone who follows us, because those of you who follow this page, I know that many of you are not Jewish, and there's this tension between, well, I support Israel, but I don't support Judaism. Right now, I think it's a very critical moment for humanity. We need to put a lot of things on hold and focus on the goal, which is to win this battle against all this darkness that exists. And something else I want to tell you about Aharon, and also connect it with myself. What's more is that Aharon, the priest, and after Aharon, his sons, they always followed after Aharon. A high priest was appointed, a high priest in Hebrew, Kohen Gadol, and the Kohen Gadol. During Yom Kippur, for example, he would put on special garments. That is, in general, the high priest would wear a whole set of clothing. The mitznefed, the minvetumim, all of this, like the breastplate and those things. And the priest had a uniform that took away his individuality, you could say, because the moment the priest puts on the uniform, he stops being an individual and now he is representing the collective of Israel. I think that's exactly what happens with Israel's soldiers. The moment the Israeli soldier puts on the uniform, he stops being an individual, he stops being Yaakov, he stops being Yosef. He's an individual who represents a collective. And that's where, in my opinion, the greatest example of Aaron is shown. The priest is in the Israeli army, because in the Israeli army, I would love for you to see it, but well, in the day-to-day society of Israel, sometimes you can see a division here and there, but in the army, it almost doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. They're made into a single unit. For example, in my unit, you can have believing Jews, non-believers, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, Arabs, Russians, Bedouins. You can have everything in one unit, and all together, all brothers, all of us, shoulder to shoulder, fighting with the goal of defending Israel. To wrap up this broadcast, I want to thank all of you who have been with us on this page for a long time, and we will be back again. It's true that there was a methodological pause, you could say, a pause in which I spent a lot of time reflecting on many personal and general topics about everything. But it's time to rise again, and we're going to come back once more with a slightly more polished approach, always keeping you in mind. All of you tuning into this broadcast, now numbering in the hundreds, you are not just numbers, okay? You are people, and each one of you is an entire world. And the fact that you are with us is impressive to me. This is proof that you are here. It's proof that there are people who want to stand with Israel, not necessarily by converting to Judaism, but who want to stand with Israel, to help, to contribute. To make it so the world can truly redeem itself from all that evil, because we can't let ourselves be convinced by the idea that evil can triumph. Evil will not triumph. We are going to overcome evil, and that will be together with you, together with Israel. And remember, you are more than welcome to join the Israel High community and become members of Israel High. I'll leave the link in the description so you can join. Enter your information there and we'll contact you about becoming members. I believe we'll be fine and succeed. Israel, we are a strong, resilient, ancient people. We have lived through much worse situations than this, and we have overcome them. Hashem has allowed us to get this far with a lot of strength and a lot of success. With a great deal of success. If you look at the amount of success the Jewish people have, it is extremely impressive. I also find the great value of the people of Israel impressive. You go there, you see it. For example, I don't know, a chemical engineer who has 500,000 followers on all his social media and is on the battlefield. You see, I don't know, bank directors, they come to the battlefield. You see university professors, they put on the uniform and come to defend Israel in the army. You see school teachers, you see the woman who bags groceries at the supermarket. We're all in this. We are a strong society. We are a people that Hashem allowed us to be strong, and we will keep going, okay? So, we will succeed together with you. Greetings from Israel. We will triumph. All the best.